son is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' Is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. We have all your action from Long Pond, Pennsylvania for the Pocono 400. That's right, kids. We're at the Tricky Triangle this week. We don't need no stinking turn 4. Stages are going to be at laps 50, lap 100, and then we'll race all the way to the finish at lap 160.
Laps led and fastest laps will not be as big of an emphasis this week compared to last week. It'll be more on place differential for your fantasy teams. But in the last 10 races here, Chevy has won 6 of them. Toyota and Ford have split the last 5 with 2 wins apiece.
And kids, we're back to the chance of rain with a 25% chance when we go racing Sunday, June 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Once again, the top 3 cars in NASCAR are the 3 fastest this week. We've got Harvick, who's the most expensive. He ran 2 10-lap runs that would have literally been number 1 and number 2 on the 10-lap average chart. And after last week's debacle, I'm going to want to own a piece of him this week. You then have Rowdy, who's starting 4th and had a fast car. He's up there in the 10-lap average rankings, but he doesn't know if he has a car that's fast enough to win the race this weekend. And then you have Martin Truex, who has been right behind those 2 guys all season long, but his car was fast and wasn't trailing off on speed during his long runs. He says he's incredibly comfortable with his car. You can't really squeeze more than one of those guys into your lineup this week if you're trying to create the lineup right with some of the guys that we're going to be talking about coming up soon. So, Liehr, what are your thoughts on those top 3 cars, and who are you looking at this week?
Yeah, brother, it's going to be one of those things with those 3 drivers. Those are our 3 main guys, with obviously Harvick and Busch dominating this 2018 season. And Truex has obviously got a win under his belt, but you know, he's had a pretty successful season as well. But, you know, after Harvick having his worst ever finish last week, starting from the rear and having the tire go down, it's kind of a no-brainer play last week, like we talked about. But, you know, at the same time, it was the cost variation versus his place differential. This week, I think he's got revenge on his mind. One thing, though, about Harvick here at Pocono, out of all the tracks, this is one of the ones that he does not have a win at. 34 starts here, 0 wins. So you know he's going to be hungry to get that victory. But as far as Kyle Busch today in the Xfinity race, he got the win today. He's always usually pretty good when he starts the weekend off right on the right foot with a win in the Xfinity series, especially coming off of a absolutely what I didn't see dominating performance last week at the Coca-Cola 600, having a Martin Truex-esque type of race of leading over 300 laps. So obviously he's going to be a contender, somebody you've got to look out for, especially since he's obviously got a lot of momentum going his direction. And then Martin Truex Jr. He's just a guy obviously that the Toyotas have been showing up a lot better of late, and even the Chevys after last week had some great finishes with Jamie McMurray's getting the top 10, and then also Jimmy Johnson. He was in the winning lineup last week, having that top 5 finish. So, but I look for Truex to also be a possible guy here this weekend that has some success. He's only got 1 win here out of 24 races. But average finish for him is 15th. So not one of his best tracks, but I'll be looking for Harvick out of those 3 to be the main guy, to be the dominator with all the factors of practice and everything else. So I'm definitely going to be on the Harvick train this week, brother.
Yeah, I'm really hoping what people are going to do is try to follow up Rowdy's win last week and his domination and drive them away from Harvick. And I'm hoping people are going to be down on Harvick after last week, after he burned almost 70% of the field. But it was the right play, and I think it's the right play again this week. Speaking of right plays coming from the back of the field, we have Aric Almirola at 8,200 starting 34th. And by the way, this no-brainer of a play is really easy because just like Harvick last week, this car is a top 10 car in 10-lap averages. It's fast. It's one of the Stewart-Haas cars, and that car has been a top 15, top 10 car all season. And at 8,200, going to have to squeeze him into your lineup unless you're trying to get cute and fade and hope that something weird happens to that car. Your opinion on
like last week, huh? Where everybody's like, oh, it's a no-brainer play playing Kevin Harvick starting from, the back of the field, but ended up being a burner. So, I mean, obviously there's going to be risk in anything that you do with your fantasy teams this week, but I mean, when it comes to a guy in that type of equipment and that starting position in his practice times, what do you think ownership percentage is going to be?
It'll probably be 55 to 65, just because the salary is a little up there. It should honestly be around 80, because I'd say there's probably a 10% chance in any race that any driver gets caught up in nonsense, right? Probably add 5 to that for Pocono being Pocono. So 15% chance he'll be low. Like, he should be high owned, but he won't be as high owned as he should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I hear you. I mean, it's definitely a guy I'm going to be rostering quite a bit of, but I think there's definitely going to have to be some sort of design fades for the just in case, just based on the ownership and everything. But
yeah, my concern is that the design fades are going to be too high in percentage because of so many people getting burnt last week. They're going to be like, I'm not playing that. And traditionally, what we see here is that at Pocono, you want guys that are more the place differential plays, because the premium on laps led and fastest laps is so low, but they're only being 160 laps.
Correct. I mean, so really, you're choosing guys that are going to be up front and stay up front, because that's the crazy part about this race is you could go and pit and still not lose a lap and still be okay. So really, it's going to come down to the fuel mileage as well, and the guys that are up front are basically going to be the leaders when they come in for fuel and tires. The rest of the field's going to kind of follow them. So really, it's just going to be I think. What I was looking at is the last handful of winners here. I think the only last time that somebody won here was from the 22nd position, and that was 3 races ago or 4 races ago. And other than that, everybody's come from the top 10 that's won within the last, I think it was 8 races.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, that would have been David Reagan's win, and it was because of a bank of fog moved in.
Oh, I'm sorry, not David Reagan. It was Chris Buescher.
Oh, sorry, Buescher. My bad.
Yeah, so 2016. You're correct.
My bad. It was Buescher. And, yeah, so it would have been the bank of fog that moved in. And
by the way, in your weather report, did they say anything about fog? Maybe
I don't know. And I will tell you this. If there's a chance that I'm running in first place with, during the last stage, that the chance of fog significantly increases as it did 2 years ago when that happened.
2 years later, he's still burned by it.
Oh, yeah, just a little bit. Anyways, Liehr, I think it's time, now that we've got the house cleaning out of the way, go ahead and do the honors, buddy.
Burning rubber, tricky, shifting style, baby!
Well done. We've already covered the main group of drivers that are dominators, but outside of those guys, if you're choosing a guy to burn some rubber, who is it this week?
Well, I think when it comes to drivers that you're looking at obviously, rostering one of the big 3, of course, and then, you've got to pick some other guys to kind of fill in your $50,000 salary cap on DraftKings this week. But I want to be going with Kez in the number 2 worth vehicle as my burning rubber pick this week at Pocono. Kez is still searching for his first win into the 2018 season, and they are definitely hungry for a win, that's for sure. They've had some really up and down races this season, which is kind of surprising since, the Stewart-Haas Fords have all been pretty much fast and, pretty much in the top 10 every single week. Logano's got a win under his belt this season. And Blaney he's won the pole here starting tomorrow. So he's had, and he's led a couple races where he's led quite a few laps. So he's had some dominating performances at some point of this season. The only one that Kez has actually managed to, have some sort of success was the Drive for Autism at Dover, where he led 81 laps, but which was a few weeks ago. But other than that, I mean, he still finished 6th in that race. So this is one of the tracks that, he's got some pretty good success on, and he's actually got a great starting position tomorrow as a place differential guy, and that's from the 17th position. But with place differential being one of the main focuses this week, he has definitely a higher percentage of finishing in the top 5 He's has 16 starts here. He's got 1 win, 8 top 5, so that means he's finished in the top 5 50% of the time he started here. And he's got 9 top 10s with an average finish of 10.5. His cost this week is $9,800, which is 6th highest on the board. And I feel basically that some fantasy players are going to aim to try to get him into the lineups, but based on the salary restrictions, I think they're going to have some difficulties. And on top of that, having the Almirola factor play into that with the $8,200 salary. So when you pick a main dominator guy like Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, and then you stick Almirola in there, and then try to get like a Kez or somebody else in there with a higher, it makes it pretty difficult. So unless you are specifically targeting him, he's going to be a tough play to get in there. But he should be a highly owned play. But I don't know if he's going to be, man. But I definitely think he is somebody you've got to put in your lineups this weekend. Your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, I think Kez will be chalky. But like you said, because of salary constraints, I don't know how high of an ownership percentage chalk is going to actually be this week. I think he's the clear play, but once again, I don't know how much people are going to own him, which makes me kind of want to swerve. And if I did, I would swerve to a Hamlin starting 10th with a great track history here, or an Elliott starting 11th, or Jimmy Johnson starting 15th, or even my burning rubber pick, which is Clint Bowyer at 9,500. Now, traditionally, as I said, you want guys that offer more place differential at Pocono, but we've seen this type of play work multiple times, and we've seen Bowyer work several times as this type of play. All the Stewart-Haas Fords are fast this season, and since joining Stewart-Haas, the 2 races he has here at Pocono, Bowyer has positive place differential. And he has 10 top 10s here. I wouldn't put it past Bowyer this weekend to finish in the top 3 in that Stewart-Haas equipment. And if he does, he will probably be on the winning lineup. Now, here's the interesting part that the interesting argument I'm making here is I think a majority of people are going to gravitate towards Kez. And if they don't gravitate towards Kez, they're going to gravitate towards Elliott based out of fandom. I think the lower guys owned this weekend are going to be Bowyer and Hamlin, and Jimmy might just be a little bit more owned than those guys. It might be a unique way for you to get on an island this week. I may end up trying it. I like Bowyer and that Stewart-Haas equipment to be the play. It's not that I don't like Kez, bro, because I do. I think Kez is a great play this week. I just think that if I play a guy like Bowyer or Hamlin, I'm going to get a lot less ownership percentage. And I realize Kez has the better place differential play out of the group, but as good as Bowyer's been running, it might be that kind of swerve that'll get me unique this week, and that's kind of where I'm gravitating.
No, I hear you there. Definitely with Bowyer being the 3rd fastest in 10-lap averages. It's one of those things where there's kind of quite a few directions we could go this weekend. I mean, we obviously haven't talked about the pole sitter yet, which is Blaney. Guy obviously won here last year. Obviously, starting from the pole. So he's got some confidence coming into this weekend and starting from the pole as well. It's just that his, 10-lap averages weren't up to par, 6th fastest, but weren't up to par as far as Harvick goes. But I think he may come with he might be a little bit of a swervish play at that $8,700 price point. But then also, too, I mean, you made a brief mention of it, but, I mean, Denny Hamlin, guy starting from the 10th position, $9,100 this week. He's got 4 wins here at Pocono, so look for him to, be a guy that, should be a consideration for your lineups as well. And we haven't even talked about Kyle Larson either. Obviously he's in a Chevy, and the Chevys are kind of getting a little bit better, but Larson's got an average finish position here of 11th, and he's got a top 5 here, and he's starting outside of the top 10 from the 13th position. So, and he was 2nd fastest in 10-lap averages. So another guy that you got to obviously consider as far as a play. So there's going to be quite a bit of direction that you can go this week with your big dogs, but I just really, really like the potential of the Keselowski from the place differential and how well he's actually done here at Pocono. And especially that team's kind of on the verge of needing to have a great performance. So I really think that they're going to come bring it this weekend. And unfortunately, they didn't make a 10-lap average run. So unfortunately, we didn't get any of that data. But I think that he's going to be a great pick, but may come at that higher ownership percentage. But I think the $9,800 salary is going to hinder that down just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and the weird part is either one of us could be absolutely right. It's very odd the way that ownership percentages sometimes break down in NASCAR differently than what you think because of those salary constraints. Now, we're going to talk about another one of the salary constraint guys that I'm going to argue you kind of need in your lineup that's going to force it around here in the value segment. But Liehr, we know we need to save money. Who are you going to tell us to save money on this week?
Man, I'm actually going with Ty Dillon in the number 13 Germain Racing car as my value play this week.
Wait a second. Hold up.
I know.
Hold up.
I know.
You're Jamie Liehr. You're not. We don't charge people for our fantasy advice. This is like. Are you sure you're someone else?
I know. This week it's free. Okay. So I'm definitely going to go there. I know what you're all saying out there, but there's just too many good fantasy factors pointing to this guy finally having a great fantasy day tomorrow at Pocono. Starts from 29th, which is about right for where he has been kind of all year and last year in that number 13. But for me, it's the stats stand out as well this weekend. But he's got 4 starts in the Cup Series here. Obviously, has 0 wins, 0 top 10s, but he does have 3 top 20 finishes. With an average finish of 18.5, which is ironically the same average finish as his brother. But in those starts, most recently, he started 30th, started 27th, 28th, and 29th. And then he has finishes of 17th, 18th, 21st, and 18th. But the best part about him this week is not even his stats and history here. It's his salary. He's $5,300 this week, which is the lowest he's been all year for sure. And I'm sure he'll probably be a pretty high-owned guy, not only from myself and us talking about him this week, but from the other perspective as well. But I think last week obviously was really low-owned just because of his starting position. But this is where he should start from, man. And, you know, with the likes of Landon Castle and Ross Chastain stuck between the middle on the salary list, he's even cheaper than Michael McDowell and DiBenedetto.
All joking aside, I actually kind of like the Ty Dillon play. I just have a couple of worries. My first worry is that after last week's super low ownership percentage because he overqualified, and because for the first time since forever I can remember, apparently that other gentleman did not tell people to play him. So he was really low owned, and that's what the salary adjustment is for. Also, like him not garnering a lot of points. I think that people might jump back on him en masse, and that's what I'm kind of worried about. But you're right, though. If he does what he's supposed to, it's not going to matter. I'm just worried that that's going to have me sharing a ton of lineups. But if everybody jumps back on, they jump back on. But if he's the right play, he's the right play. I would just personally rather play Matty DB or McDowell and find the extra couple $100. That's just my stance. You want a chance to retort?
No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there's other great, value guys too this weekend with Chris Buescher at $5,900. We've got his teammate AJ Allmendinger, who's got good history here. And then always you got the McDowell and the DiBenedetto plays. So, I mean, there's definitely different directions you can roll this weekend with the value play. Even Ross Chastain at $5,100 from the 31st position. I think that, we always talk about Cole Witt, quite a bit too. And we haven't had much Cole Witt success lately, but even him at $5,000 from 35th. I mean, there's plenty of directions you can roll this weekend.
Yeah, if only Cole Witt was running like he used to, where we could make that play on a consistent basis. And I never thought, and I'm guessing Cole Witt never thought he would be begging to be in the equipment he was a couple of years ago. That's just odd. All right, now, guys, I realize for my value play, I'm spending a little bit more than what we traditionally spend for the value, but I've got to talk about Erik Jones starting 25th. He has 2 top 10s here and a top 5 in 2 races at this track. Now, granted, that means he has almost no experience other than last year's racing here. But, guys, a car that good with a guy that is that good at this track and a limited sample size at 8,400 is almost a must play. Now, I'm worried once again that this is going to be one of those plays that carries with it an extremely high ownership percentage, which means that if I wanted to get cute here, what I would do is probably pivot to his teammate Suarez at 7,300 as my swerve. He has 2 top 20s and a top 10 here. I think that's the way to go if you want to go swervy and you save $1,100. But if you want the extreme value, you go with one of the guys we've already talked about. I think these are the guys that are quote-unquote value in the sense that they're at least $1,000 cheaper than all those 9,000 guys that we were talking about and the 10,000 guys. But one of these guys is going to be on a winning lineup, in my opinion. It's either going to be Jones or Suarez. I just don't know which one. That's what my gut's telling me this week. But I could be wrong. Liehr?
Or it could be both. I mean, you could have to have both of them. I mean, I don't know if you remember last year. I mean, there was a stretch period there where, I mean, you had to roster both of the guys for really good, 2-3 week time period. But, I mean, Erik Jones, guys starting from the 25th position. 2 starts that he had here. Now, granted, it was with Furniture Row Racing, which is a partnership with Joe Gibbs. But I mean, guy started 9th, finished 8th, and then started 15th and finished 3rd. So obviously, has some really good stats here from last year. Even led laps in both races.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely love the Erik Jones play this week. Again, it's just going to come down to the salary factor to make which way you're going to roll. I really think the way that I'm going to go is I'm just going to try to pick and establish one dominator guy, possibly that has a little bit of place differential in there too, maybe not. And then, all place differential guys from there, and to get some of that salary relief as well. So I can try to get the, Erik Jones and Aric Almirolas in there. But I think when you start trying to do that kind of stuff, that's when you start getting really chalky of the chalk.
Mm-hmm.
And got to start mixing things up a little bit. So,
yeah, which is why when I feel that we're on a play that's so chalk, I try to give you a couple of counter plays to make there, and just to give you some pivot room, guys. Is there anything else that you feel we need to talk about value-wise before we get into the going to the garage segment, which is personally my favorite this week? I've got a rant that I've got to get off my chest.
No, not really, brother. I think that there's plenty of directions to go this week, and it's going to be an interesting week to see how it comes to fruition and see what happens. But obviously, most times what happens from the back is, there's not very many laps to move up. So, you got to pick some of those guys that start from the top. So, especially to dominate, and then some of the place differential guys. But you got to, have the guy, because I really think that there's probably going to be some attrition again this weekend. We saw obviously today in the Xfinity race that there was some of that happening. So,
right, but they're in that giant rear spoiler aero package that's supposed to bunch everybody together. Like, we've got a completely different aero package for the main guys.
And I get that, but it's still, I mean, same racetrack, and I think that we usually have some attrition here a little bit, not a ton. But I definitely think there's going to be some sort of issue happening this weekend for sure. Somebody that we're not expecting.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, kids. Now that we've got that wrapped up, it's time for going to the garage. I'm really amped up about this, and I think Liehr's got a pretty cake going to the garage for y'all. So, Liehr, kick it off, and then I'll get my rant out of the way.
Yeah, my piece of cake for this weekend is, and all of you out there, pretty much a no-brainer here, but I'm going to roll with J-Mac. Not really, like I said, going on a limb on this one this week, but he's just been obviously way overqualified on Friday for tomorrow, starting in the 3rd position. He actually did it, like we talked about, have a little bit of a decent race last week at Charlotte, finishing 6th after starting 7th, scoring 40 fantasy points for you. But J-Mac has 30 starts here. He's got 0 wins, 0 top 5s, and only 7 top 10s out of 30 starts. So, for instance, last year he started both Pocono races from the top 10, actually started from the 3rd position, and finished 26th and 37th. His cost this week is $7,400, but there's just obviously better fantasy options this weekend out there for your fantasy teams this week. So, J-Mac to go back to McDonald's this weekend.
Yes. Someone else that needs to go to the garage is DraftKings. and that's who I'm sending to the garage. It is absolutely egregious that there is no Cole Custer this weekend. It is unforgivable. If you can add golfers, if you can add starting pitchers, and you can add players to other sports, there is absolutely no excuse for you to not add drivers to a NASCAR field before the contest starts. It isn't even the first time this has happened. This is absolutely disrespectful to fantasy NASCAR players in general. We only have 38 drivers to choose from on a week, and you're deciding one that's a legitimate play this week, in my opinion. That increases the likelihood of duplicate lineups, which means that more of us are playing for even less after DraftKings has already constantly reduced the top end prizes on these prize pools to almost make it unplayable to begin with. I want to specifically thank DraftKings for showing that you absolutely don't care about your fantasy NASCAR product and about your fantasy NASCAR players. As one of several players that has paid thousands of dollars in rake to DraftKings, I don't think it's too much for us as players to ask for them to give us a competent and full-out NASCAR package. I'm at a loss for the disrespect shown to their NASCAR players and their NASCAR community. It's probably unintentional, but the fact that they don't have somebody checking it is even more egregious. Liehr, your opinion on my rant? I think I'm done.
Absolutely, and thank you. First, we've got Timmy Hill, who's still showing on the roster list. After it says, alert, Timmy Hill will not race in the Pocono 400 this week. Check your lineups with an exclamation point. And then even then, they still have Reed Sorensen on there as well. But he's not highlighted in red. He's still in black. But he doesn't have a starting position next to his name, does he? I mean, it's just I don't know how you can't put Cole Custer in there, especially when these guys submit the rosters to NASCAR. And I'm assuming then NASCAR then sends that over to somebody at DraftKings. I'm not really, maybe Pierce could, fill us in on that. But, I mean, I just don't understand how they could have him on the active roster list there. But definitely, yeah, shame on you, DraftKings, for not having a complete lineup for us this weekend. And, again, just thanks again for having tournaments that basically pay out to the top and the rest of us just kind of get crapped on every week.
Well, it's because they went to paying like 25+% fields instead of 20 and using that money to actually make the positions pay out. I want to be clear. There are moments when I love what some things DraftKings does, and we on this show absolutely get their back and applaud them when they do the right things, right? But when they don't do the right things, they need to be held accountable. And this is just egregious, and it's disrespectful. And I understand that they're in the throes of trying to get sports gambling as part of their platform now that the Supreme Court has changed that ruling, and that's great and all. But dude, guys, the people that are paying the bills for you right now are your players paying rate, and to not offer them the proper is negligent in my opinion, and it's too bad for DraftKings and it's too bad for the sport of NASCAR and for fantasy NASCAR.
I agree with you, brother, and it's getting harder and harder each and every week to throw the money in there because it's the tournaments are getting smaller and smaller. It's also one of those things too where, whatever happened to the, I do like the 3 entry max ones, the single entry max, just because it has a more of a even playing field instead of somebody just mass 150 entering into a tournament. But, obviously you got to have one that pays huge at the top, but even, a 10K or a 10 max entry. It's just, I don't know. It's getting harder and harder to keep pumping money into something that I love and not seeing any, things taking place to where they're actually in favor of offering more options for the consumer instead of dwindling it down and then not even giving you every opportunity to have all the players and everything on there that need to be on there for you to make that separation for yourself versus another fantasy player. So it just seems like they really have whoever is in charge of the NASCAR product is A, just doesn't give a darn, or B, they just are doing it because They've got a contract with NASCAR itself, and it's just something they have to, feel obligated to do, and really don't care about the NASCAR product in general.
I mean, I still long for the days when we had those great 33 and 25. They range between 20 to 27 and $33 tournaments where we had 10, 15, 25K on a weekly basis to the winner of that tournament. Like, what happened to those tournaments? We have more people playing DraftKings NASCAR than ever before, but we're playing for tournaments where you win that are larger field sizes than those, where you're only winning $1,000 up top and $2,000 up top on the crazy big ones. Like, come on, man. And if you don't want to play those, you have to enter the lottery where you're playing so many thousands of people to try to luck box into it. And the only way that tournament really makes sense is to put the dumbest possible lineup that you can come up with that'll be unique and that has a chance at the 50K. Right? Like, yeah. That's what we've seen win.
People, yeah.
And that's what we've seen win this year in that tournament. Yeah. Are nonsensical lineups that no one would ever put together. But, I mean, and I'm sorry.
Obviously somebody put them together.
Well, right. But I'm not the kind of player that wants to play, like, putting nonsense together and knowing I've lit my money on fire unless something random happens. Like, that doesn't seem like, well, I'll tell you what that is. That's not a game of skill. That's a game of luck.
No, it is not.
Between not showing players the right respect and not structuring contests properly, like, DraftKings really needs to get their stuff together, in my opinion.
Well, if any indicator it's not skill and it's more about luck, then let's just go to the first week at Indianapolis and the final at the Rover in Charlotte. I mean, that's going to be all luck.
By the way, before we wrap up the show, this is something, speaking of Indy, one of the races that they're talking about adding that aerodynamics package that we saw at the Charlotte at the All-Star race. This season, they're talking about possibly adding that to Indy. So basically,
there's another wrench for you.
Yep, have fun with that. But kids, the reason why we keep doing this is we love having you as a part of our audience, and we really love this community, and we want to make it better. That's why we're critiquing DraftKings and sending them to the garage this weekend. But with that said, guys, we love that you're tuning in. Thank you again for watching. As always, Liehr, give us last week's contest winner and get us out of here.
All right. As far as last week at Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600, congratulations to our guy, a lot on the channel, but Brett Osman with a massive score of 385.75. He had A.J. Allmendinger with 31 points. Kyle Busch, which was a obvious must-own, 209.75. Matty DiBarito with a 1.5. Even going to the garage, he still took it home. Jimmy Johnson, another must-own at 60 points. Kyle Larson with a 51.5, and he had Daniel Suarez with a 32. So 385.7. Congratulations, Mr. Brett Osman. Nice work, sir.
Congrats, buddy. Great job.
Well, I hope you all have a great weekend. Awesome Memorial Day weekend last weekend. Again, hope you guys did thank a veteran last weekend. The more the merrier. But looking forward to tomorrow, having some fun watching that. And definitely going to be getting some lineups in. And thanks you guys for watching. Have a great weekend.
Later, y'all. Let's win some money this week.